as a logician, then you understand the problems for what they really are. And because the problems are what they are, then because, so I'm going to repeat this just in case. So if you really want to understand how it works, you have to become a logician. A real mathematician is a logician. He's a real solving real problems. So I just in case the video, something happened because I saw something that happened there, I'm going to repeat it again so it's in full there. So a logician is a real mathematician. So solving real life problems, the problems of mathematics are based on that, on a lack of logic. So when you're a logician, then you understand what the logic is, meaning you understand the problem. And because you understand the problem, then you can fix it with logic. And logic is structural. So all problems can be solved structurally. So that's what I proven with P equals NP. Understanding the limits. And once you understand the limit, then you understand the logic, because everything is contained within that limit. And if you understand the geometry and the topology of it, in this case the sphere, which is infinity itself, then you can solve anything, because everything is structural, is a structure contained within the sphere. So if you understand the topology and the geometry, then everything becomes extremely easy, because it's just deduction. And that's what logic is. That's tautology. If you understand what logic is, it's all about tautology. So logic is that. Logic is precisely that. Logic is understanding the structure. And once you understand the structure, then you can solve anything, because it's the truth. You understand the real nature of it, the limits of it. And because you understand that, then you can map it. And because once you have the system to map it, the tautology, then it would always be Boolean, meaning true. You would always get to the truth. You would always get to the logic, because it's logical. This is why computers work, which was my previous point, which is why I use P equals NP first, because it's a mathematical problem, you see, based on computing. So that's why, because it's a logic, you see. So once you understand logic and computers being logical, then you can understand mathematics for what it truly is, which is just a mechanism used by logic to express itself and tell the truth, because logic is truth. So if you're real about logic and understand what logic is, tautology, because logic is nothing else but tautology, is what it is. So if you understand what tautology is, then you understand what logic is. And if you understand what logic is, you understand what truth is, because truth is logical. So the truth is logical. And that's how it works. So if you want to know the answer, you need to know the truth. And to know the truth, you need to understand the logic. And to understand the logic, you need to know the structure. And to know the structure, you need to understand what the structure is. And to understand what the structure is, you need to know what the topology of the structure is, which is its geometry, which it gives you the answer, because then you understand its limits. And because we're talking about infinity here, then it means that infinity itself is spherical in nature, because that's its topology, that's its geometry. And once you understand this, then you can map anything, because infinity itself is everything that there is and would always be. So if you understand this as the fundamental truth of existence, then you understand that in order for you to be a real mathematician solving real problems, you need to be a logician first. Because by becoming a logician, then you see all these problems as easy solutions, because you have the path of least resistance, which in a big way has to do with P equals NP, because it's deduction, and the deduction is based on the structure. So I have done a lot of logical work. I have provided so much. My contribution is enormous. It really is the biggest contribution. So there is really, like, before me is Euler, and before Euler, Euclid, if you really understand what I mean. So that's it, because it's pi and phi. That's all it really matters in the end. And pi obviously is Euclid and Archimedes, right? The sphere. And then after that, is Euler, because Euler's work was that proved pretty much everything. It's the foundation of everything, really, if you understand it. If you understand logic for what logic really is, then you understand that Euler was the one that did the heavy lifting after Euclid and Archimedes. So it took like nearly 2,000 years, for the real math to show up, because Euclid and Archimedes did the first work, which was understanding what pi was. And then once they understood the sphere, and then and its basic geometry. Then kind of things moved along a little bit, which led to Euler. And then Euler led to me, which is I proved everything. I solved everything. So there's nothing that cannot be solved because I solved it all. So all the problems have been solved. There's no more human problems from a mathematical point of view. What it is a lack of understanding. So there is not this is the era of solutions. This is the era of truth. This is the era of the sphere. This is the new era that we have entered because of my work. So we're not in the search of the answers anymore. We know what the truth is. So it's just what are we going to do with the truth, which is infinity. So then we have to create infinite things. So this is the whole point. And I am this human. This is my contribution. I'm always going to be remembered like that. It's going to be Euclid, Archimedes, Euler, and then me. Because of what I've done. Because I wouldn't be able to do anything that I've done if it wasn't because of Euler. And I wouldn't have been able to, and Euler wouldn't, it would have been impossible for Euler to do the work he's done if it wasn't because of Archimedes and Euclid. Because they were the ones that developed the geometry that Euler used to map its identities and everything that he's done, which is essentially big. But it was incomplete because that's what it was at the time. So, but now I completed it. So essentially I completed Euclid, Archimedes, and Euler's work. That's what I've done. And I solved everything. Everything from a physics point of view, from a biology point of view, from a chemistry point of view, from a mathematics point of view, everything. There is no one single question that cannot be answered. Now, everything, if you're a human and you have imagination, any question that you have can be answered immediately. Immediately, if you have the right tools. And this is all because of my work. Because I have become this human being. I have become the human being that ushered the era of the sphere. So we have entered this new, historical era, this epoch on Earth. And it has to do with infinity itself and what infinity is, because I have proven everything. There is no one single thing that I haven't proven, because of the magnitude of my work. And this is why I did it in that way, because I needed to tackle the hardest problems. And the hardest problems were logical problems, not mathematical problems. Because if you understand what logic is, again, then you would understand that the mathematical tools and language used was illogical, meaning it was incomplete, because they were essentially in denial of the sphere. It was like the sphere was a bully. Think of the sphere as a bully, and everyone was afraid of it. No one wanted to face it, because facing the sphere meant facing infinity. Facing infinity meant facing zero. Facing zero was facing essentially everything that exists. And for a mathematician, a real mathematician who's real about mathematics, it's a very, it's confronting. I'm faced with everything that exists here. So when this is the type of situations that you encounter, then a lot of mathematicians, they just shy away from the truth because they don't understand it. So they start to minimize it or simplify it or try to renormalize it by ignoring it. So they just start to patch up things. So things kind of work. They do, but they're not the truth. They are just an approximation of the truth. But because it's a decent approximation, then we can build up a society around it. It's like, it's the best tool that we had, so let's figure it out and go as we go. See how things develop. That was kind of like the mindset for the last 2,000 years or so, since Euclid. That's what we've been doing, stumbling upon truth step by step. But because there's so many pieces already there, essentially it just needed to be someone, in this case me, who understood what logic is, and it was extremely logical, and just looked at the world as the world truly is, which is spherical, and understood it, and then put it together. And that's what I've done. And by doing that, essentially, I mapped everything. This is not a theory, this is truth. I essentially provided the truth. So if you want to know everything, then I told you what the truth is there. And Riemann hypothesis is a big one, because then again, the prime is irrational and transcendental, right? It's forever, is infinite in nature, pi. So pi is that. So that's why the foundational work is called the prime mover, because it's the first move, it's the first motion of existence itself. And I proved it in a big way. So because of that, then everything became easier after that, because essentially I found out the blueprint of existence. Of if I know what the truth is, mathematically speaking, and I can just test it and prove it. And because of that, then that's what I've been doing. So I tackled all the big problems to test, and I call them meta logic, because then again, it's the logic of the logic. Is that understanding what the problem is. And so what is the problem? Well, the problem is that we're using the wrong tools. That's what the problem is, if you understand logic for what logic is, because the language itself was incomplete. So what I've done is understand what the limitations of which is, and again, mathematics, the limits of the structure that contain the language and the mathematics itself, and I essentially understood it and say, okay, so what are the limitations of it? Okay, so these are the breakdowns, these are the patches, and these are the problems that we have. So you see, that's how a logician thinks. You understand the logic of it. And then, okay, so then what's the solution? Well, the solution